Well, if you enjoy watching the clubbing of seals, you probably had a great time watching last night's Boston Celtics Miami Heat game, an elimination game for the Miami Heat. They're in their off season. If you thought maybe there was a second miracle available there on the money line after game two, when the Heat at 8-1 managed to knock off the Boston Celtics and eventually extended the series to 5 games, maybe it wasn't so enjoyable. But if you were betting at all, Bet Online is your number one source for all your summer sports this season. From MLB, golf, NBA, and NHL playoff stats, all the latest stats, news, and scores available to follow your favorite teams. Get the latest odds and lines, including the latest team matchups, player props, and odds on just about every sport out there. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on all the action. Bet Online, where the game starts. Well, the game started and it was finished early on last night. Miami Heat, Lubie's favorite team to complain about, now in their off season, and that leads to Lubie's favorite time of the year to discuss the NBA when nothing is happening. There are no games being played, no more action, no more anticipation. All you have to do is wait for training camp next year. And what do you think the big conversation is here in South Florida? Because we're starstruck here in South Florida. I know maybe all NBA cities are. Are there NBA cities that are happy if their team doesn't have a bona fide NBA superstar?
Oh, no.
Maybe. I mean, if they're winning, I don't know. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander is emerging as an NBA superstar, but is he accepted as such already because he plays in Oklahoma City? No. That's maybe the one place in the NBA where you're talking about basketball purgatory. I guess Portland could qualify as that now too, but at least Portland has some kind of a history of success. Now, Utah does in the extent that you could go back to Stockton and Malone. But Oklahoma City, well, forget about it. I mean, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, did I say Utah? Oklahoma City, even more of a bastion of nothingness when it comes to NBA identity. But, I mean, can you do it without a star? We don't seem to be able to accept that here in South Florida, where the Heat went down in a ball of flames last night. That was difficult to watch. It was kind of like watching when it came out of the locker room, the Gladiator movie, which I saw a little glimpse of last night. And what an amazing strategy by Russell Crowe. Everybody thought he was this gutsy leader and warrior, but the truth was he hid behind that first guy that came out of the chute. That guy's face was splattered by a spiked steel ball that came swinging from the rafters. And then after that, with a little juke move, there's Russell Crowe. He's right there in the center of the ring saying, hey, bring on the Lions. I don't care. I got a sword now. Like he was fucking Zorro. A disaster, though, last night. I don't know that you could have anticipated much else. Is there any way that you would have expected at plus 650 a second miracle in Beantown, which the Heat have a history of accomplishing, but they certainly don't do it while being compromised to the extent of having 3 of their top 5 players out, including their top 2 in Jimmy Butler and Terrence Rozier. No Jaime Jaquez Jr., who was a very, very valuable rookie pickup in the middle of the first round of the draft out of UCLA. 4 years of experience, Lubie. Maybe that stands for something, huh? Does that have some meaning as an NBA player coming into the league? It certainly did with Jaquez. He showed a lot of maturity. But where are the Heat at? I mean, they seem to be in Pat Riley no man's land at this stage.
I mean, I didn't watch any of the game. Look, the frustrating part to me is that it was Derek White that stole the show, and I watched a lot of Derek White when he doesn't play the Heat. He started for the Celtics this year, and the Celtics were happy about who Derek White was. Derek White sucked, and he was average at best until he plays the Heat. And then usually the Heat give him 1 or 2 games, and then they get him in check. This series, they had no idea what to do with him, and not having Jimmy Butler really threw off their entire defense. Their 3-point outside of the one game where they locked in defensively and Tyler Hero actually contributed, their defense sucked the entire series. And their offense was just a disaster. And then once Hawkins Jr. wasn't playing last night, it was like, okay, you're missing. Because that people forget, like Josh Richardson was actually a nice move for them. He was supposed to be in their top 8. He didn't play most of this season. You didn't have Butler. You didn't have Rozier. At the end of the season, they're 2 best offensive players. Then you don't have Hawkins Jr. Jovic got hurt in the game. Robinson, who became one of the integral parts of them when they played their best basketball this year, Duncan Robinson was a big part of it. He was not himself. He was only out there because they needed bodies but he couldn't do anything.
Yeah, his
Like,
back supposedly is in worse shape than Quasimodo's. I mean,
exactly.
he
Like,
was in
it's funny.
rough
My buddy
shape.
was like, "Well, this time of year, everyone's hurt." I'm like, "Okay, what team's missing 5 of their 8-man rotation? 5? No one. I'm sorry, that's a load of garbage." But again, look, this has been the Heat's issue for 4 straight years. Every year, and going back to the bubble where they were the better team than the Lakers, but Dragic, who was dominating, gets hurt in the finals, and that's the end of it. It's for 4 straight years now. Injuries has been a major problem for the Heat. Literally, they started more people than anyone in the NBA by double this year. So to go to the injury thing as a complaint, I guess it gets old when it's your team every year and your team's problem every year. Last night was never going to be a game.
No, that was a disaster. I mean,
It was
it
gonna
proved
be-
that Spoelstra probably can't take the Washington Generals lineup and beat the Celtics. Because that's essentially what he had. He had like athletes in action. He had one of those teams that you're thinking, oh, yeah, that's what happened to Ralph Drollinger, a 7-foot geek from UCLA. He's Christian now. Unbelievable. Both games were blowouts, by the way. I don't know that it was anticipated that Dallas, no Kawhi Leonard for the LA Clippers, who play okay without Kawhi Leonard in the lineup. But that wasn't the case last night. That game was close while I was watching it. I turned it off in the second half. And apparently, I didn't miss anything unless, once again, you enjoy watching the clubbing of seals or some absurd mismatch, because Dallas ends up winning that game 123-93 and now up 3-2 on the LA Clippers. So Boston awaits the next round of the postseason, and they're going to get what? They're going to get the Pacers Milwaukee winner?
No, winner of Cavs Magic.
Oh, Cavs Magic, yeah. Cavs Magic. So in a pretty good position. Porzingis looks like he may miss time in the next series as well. That was a nice addition. Because they were in blowout material, Stan Van Gundy was forced to do nothing. Speaking of blow, I mean, he was forced to do nothing but a complete blowjob of Brad Stevens as the executive of the year. I don't know. Did he achieve that status? Was he voted executive of the year, Brad Stevens?
I think so. I think it's a lot of garbage. I mean, the moves he made were bullshit. It was fucking the Blazers hating him, Drew Holiday, for nothing. And I actually, did you see Drew Holiday do anything? Drew Holiday looked like a fucking shell of himself. Defensively, he wasn't anything special, and he did nothing on offense. So he's getting all this praise for Drew Holiday. This Drew Holiday is not the Drew Holiday who was helping the Bucks contend for titles. And
he's good in spots, but he isn't always a big factor.
He's a fine player, but like big moves where they added Drew Holiday and they added Porzingis. Oh, by the way, where's Porzingis? Oh, hurt. Shocker. And what's funny is the way he didn't get hurt.
But I don't know that it's fair to say that. I mean, the guy was okay most of the season, Lubie.
But he's going to get hurt. And he's going to get hurt by the playoffs. That's literally what I said. I'm like, he may play during the year. And the reason he played was that he still only played like 50-something games. So whether he's playing 50-something games because you're game managing him or 50-something games because he's hurt, it's the same fucking thing. Like, the dude played 50-something games. So I was right in that regard. And then I said, when it
you do have a certain amount of medical clairvoyance when it comes to Porzingis and the Celtics, because you root against them so vehemently and, are so enthusiastic about seeing them in decline. I don't know. They move on. They were the best in the East. I don't know that I see anybody being overwhelmingly threatening, even without Porzingis in the lineup. So there's a pretty solid chance. As much as they have a penchant and a tendency to choke, Lubie, the Boston Celtics, this edition of the Celtics, I mean, back in the day, you could compare. I mean, I saw a very viable comparison. People are always talking about, hey, who's better, Michael Jordan or LeBron James? You could look at the stats and the accomplishments of one John Hondo Havlicek and say that he had a more productive career than Michael Jordan. Very similar. I mean, it was interesting, a tale of the tape there. And do you ever hear Havlicek's name mentioned among the greats of all time? Never.
No, it was
not once, right? He was a sixth man there for the Celtics. How good were they? How stacked were they? So a reason to root against the Celtics, I guess that whole thing of greatness and the smugness of the Boston Celtic fans, you're hoping Johnny Most somewhere during the playoffs is rolling over in his grave going, hey, there's a steal by your bird. And you're thinking, no, that didn't happen, Johnny. That was in the past. It's over, Johnny. It's over. Anyway, interesting stuff. Hockey last night. Dallas takes a 3-2 lead. They won 3 straight after dropping the opening 2. There was a handicapper, Lubie, that I thought was part of the Bury America campaign, and he suggested that you bet the Dallas Stars to win the Stanley Cup after they went in an 0-2 hole, saying now's the time to pounce. Do you have those kind of balls, Lubie? Well, when it really looks like it's stacked against you, your horse gets left in the gate and you just had to run to the window and they allow you to make one late bet. You're trailing by 20 lengths. Down 0-2 after losing the first 2 at home. The Dallas Stars now up on the Las Vegas Golden Knights, the defending Stanley Cup champions, 3-2 after a 3-2 win last night. And Edmonton closes out its series against the LA Kings. Portnoy's the guy with the 150,000 on Edmonton at 7-1 to win $1.2 million. Edmonton now waiting for the winner of your choice to win the Stanley Cup, Mr. Don Cherry, the Vancouver Canucks. We know nothing about. Can we name one Vancouver player? I know Luongo was there many years ago. Pavel Bury was real good when he was with Vancouver. Anybody else on the Vancouver roster that we can drop a name in there? Sound like we know something about hockey? Nothing, right? And they're up 3-2 on Nashville. So Edmonton waiting for the Nashville winner. Interesting, out of the world of boxing, there's always controversy. Did you happen to see this press conference yesterday? It was quite the lightning rod press conference, says the great Oscar De La Hoya, now a boxing promoter who's had his share of problems. Originally was the guy behind Canelo Alvarez. He did, with Golden Boy Promotions, built Canelo Alvarez into a household name around the world, and somebody that was a real glamour attraction. I still remember Canelo, and I know he's very good. He's won almost all of his fights. But at the same time, he's had the benefit of the scorecard. Those Adelaide Bird scorecards were a little bit exceptional, weren't they? 118, 110, Canelo. Meanwhile, he's being carried out of the arena in a stretcher there. And you're thinking, how did he win this fight by 8 rounds? That's incredible. That notwithstanding, I mean, some of the favorable judgments that he's gotten, that time he fought Mayweather when, he was a little bit green at that time. Yes. But Mayweather wasn't capable of breaking an egg with either hand, so you had no reason to fear Mayweather's punching power. He hadn't knocked out anybody but Victor Ortiz, and Victor Ortiz, the only reason he got knocked down is he thought that he had a timeout somehow.
Yes.
And had his hands behind his back while Joe Cortez says, "Go ahead and hit him, Floyd. Hit him now." That was his only knockout in like his last 30 fights.
Yeah.
So the fact that Canelo froze in that spot, I really didn't have a great amount of respect for him there. I thought, well, that was a real test. And when he was faced with a real fighter in front of him instead of one of those stiffs that was dug up out of a German graveyard, all of a sudden he wasn't such a tough guy. But wow, did you hear the vitriol between these two? Canelo's asserting that Oscar De La Hoya has sexual habits that aren't necessarily in conjunction with the norm, and continued to use this word that was thrown about very liberally when I was working in restaurants in L.A. by the Mexican people who were employed in the kitchen there. They were constantly using the word puto. And apparently the questioning of Oscar De La Hoya's sexuality was very prominent in this press conference. And then Oscar tells Canelo that, show me some fucking respect. I thought they were going to get it on, Lubie. It was great. And then, of course, the controversy popped up again yesterday with Ryan Garcia, who had this big victory over Devin Haney. Not only did he come into the fight 3 pounds overweight, which was highly controversial and supposedly suggested by the aforementioned Mayweather, but he was laced with more steroids than Jose Canseco. It's like he had... Actually, you know what's odd? Victor Conti became a boxing manager of sorts, a physical trainer for a very accomplished fighter out of the Philippines named Nonito Donaire, who fought into his 40s. I think he may have just recently retired. And somehow what was resurrected from the boxing grave by Victor Conti, who was in his corner. Conti, of course, had gone clean and was never going to mess with steroids again after running the Balco Labs and essentially carrying Barry Bonds to record proportions there, where Hank Aaron would never get over it. Old Hank, he was buried thinking, this asshole broke my record. Are you kidding me? Remember that video? I mean, that was great, Lubie. When they did that video there, they had the video on the board. Hank Aaron refused to follow Bud Selig around to all the various stadiums where Bonds might break his record and hit his 756th home run. And he refused to go. And so they had him make a video congratulating Bonds that they could play when he finally accomplished the monumental feat of having the most home runs in Major League Baseball history. And then it was great, Lubie, because you did a good job of digging this up. Because as Hank was saying, well, Barry, you're the greatest home run hitter of all time, they started to pull back, and you had two guys with ski masks on and AK-47s pointed at Aaron's head saying, just read the script, Hank. Don't deviate. Unbelievable. The phoniness that goes on in sports. But, wow, so Ryan Garcia, very tainted victory now over Devin Haney after he knocked this guy down 3 times and looked like a beast in the process. And he was laced with more stuff and ended in O-N-E than even Tiger Woods was after that session with Dr. Galea in whatever tournament that was that We saw Tom Rinaldi interview him. There's a shadowy figure running out of the back of Tiger's house with a little medical bag. And Rinaldi looks over and goes, oh, it's good that you have company today. Kentucky Derby coming up. We got some picks. We talked to the king of all futures yesterday, a gentleman named Paul Massell, who has been a long time astute handicapper of the Derby. And you have to think a little bit outside of the box here if you're betting the Kentucky Derby. Sure, anybody could spot the favorite there. Fierceness was brilliant in the Florida Derby. Won by 10 lengths, under wraps, Johnny V, Mike Rapoli, the usual connections. You're thinking this horse is going to be very prominent. But it is the Kentucky Derby. Weird things happen, Lubie. You also have Sierra Leone, who comes from the back of the pack. You would think that would be perfect for the first venture by these 3-year-olds going 1.25 miles. But traffic problems being what they are, you're better off on I-95 than you are in the stretch run for the Kentucky Derby if you're trying to get somewhere in a hurry. Just a touch. The 8-ball was the selection. 10-1 morning line. Just a touch. And then domestic product, Lubie. Domestic product. So we're going 8, 15. Those are our 2 wild card selections in the Derby. You want to play the chalk? Go ahead. Start gargling with milk and magnesium. It usually doesn't happen. Now, one of those 2 favorites may show up in the trifecta, and that's what we're gunning for. We're going to have our safari hats on tomorrow's edition of the morning briefing here, because if you can hit the trifecta in a pool of 20 horses when there's nothing but sucker money, so-called dead money in the pools, all of these people that never bet a horse race in their life, they're sending it in on the Kentucky Derby all of a sudden. I saw an instructional video by somebody who should know better being done, somebody in the racing industry, a young woman who calls the races at parks. And she has some kind of instructional video on how to bet the Derby. You know what her theory was? Pick out a horse that you like and bet it to win.
No, there you go.
Whoa! I tell you what, now my betting strategies have changed dramatically after listening to that. But what a beautiful piece of instructional advice that is. Our advice is fuck the favorites and see if you can't make a score with something else. So we're giving you the 8, just a touch, and the 15, domestic product. And we're going to pass on the Japanese horses. What do you think, Lubie? I have no luck with Asian dealers when it comes to blackjack. I don't mean to cast any aspersions that way. We don't want to get in trouble. It is no filter after all. So, I mean, you'd think you get a pass, right? But everybody's always talking about the Japanese horse. Oh, you got to bet the Japanese horse. Everybody's betting the Japanese horse. I say screw you to that, and I'm going to leave out the Japanese horses, although many people like Forever Young, just on the name alone, if you were going to pick out a name. But at Forever Young, I guess Ryan Seacrest should probably bet on that horse. Huh? How does he do it, Ryan Seacrest?
I don't know. He's
Is he gargling with Botox? This guy doesn't age. He does 100 jobs, and he doesn't age. He's got the whole thing figured out. So there's our Derby parlay special, our exacta gold seal double wheel special. If you can catch an 8-15 or have those 2 horses factor in with any other horse in the trifecta configuration, jackpot bowling. We're going to be asking on Monday, where are you guys taking us for dinner? All right, Lubie, we have to run. What do you think? Tonight's action in the NBA, Knicks and the 76ers. 76ers laying 3 points at home. You talked about Joel Embiid. We said he looked more like the English patient than he did a basketball player that's involved in late action in the first round of the playoffs. Can the Philadelphia 76ers force a Game 7 at the Garden, Lubie, tonight against the New York Knicks?
My heart wants to say the Sixers are going to extend this series. The way the games have been officiated.
Refs admitted, though, that they blew the call that Tyrese Maxey walked prior to launching that 3-pointer that turned into a 4-point play that turned that game around.
In the last 10 years in the NBA, that's the call that I'm sure Knicks fans are going to hold on to.
Yeah.
The refs have been massively Knicks-sided, and that's my problem is I think it could be another close game, and if it's a close game, I think the Knicks will definitely get the benefit of the whistle.
Knicks screaming, we was robbed after that, by the way. What nerve.
Yeah, you're robbed. You were given
that schluppy-looking Tom Thibodeau, who looks like he's.
You were given a game. That Maxey started to hit the fucking ridiculous ass shot. Like you guys were literally given. If they call the foul, that was clearly a foul. They go up by 4. You're not winning that game. If they call the timeout, they probably resets the entire situation. You're not winning. Like you were given a game.
Yes.
The dude still had to hit a stupid ass shot. Like, get the fuck out of here. I'm no. The refs have been horrendous. They've been very Knicks-sided. And to me, that means the Knicks will probably close it out tonight.
All right, Pacers laying 8.5 against Milwaukee. That gets back to the question we opened the show with. Does Milwaukee have another miracle up its sleeve? And you would have to think no. If Milwaukee somehow ends up winning this game and tying the series at 3 apiece, sending it back to Milwaukee, Doc Rivers, Coach of the Year.
Yeah.
Definitively Coach of the Year. If he can win with these scrubs, I mean, he's proven he can't win with major talent.
Exactly.
So if he can win with these scrubs against the Indiana Pacers, a team that was up and coming all season long and really an eye-opening squad in many, many ways, Halliburton became a bona fide NBA household name during the course of the season. That defense, by the way, speaking of Halliburton, of course, an all-star in the NBA, but that defense in the Heat Celtics game, by the time we got to the middle of the third quarter, it did look like the all-star game, didn't it?
Oh, he played.
It was the Ole defense. Just go ahead, go ahead and take a few lamps. All right, very exciting. All of the action just tremendous. We got the Derby coming up on Saturday, so we're excited about that. NBA action tonight. That Heat, the 76ers series against the New York Knicks has been very compelling. So very enjoyable to watch because it's been highly competitive. So we'll see what happens in that one. Kind of hoping for a Game 7 there. The Philadelphia Brass has bought 2,000 tickets to the game to keep Knick fans out. After the disgrace of what happened there when the Knick fans were chanting MVP for Jalen Brunson and clearly overshadowed and overshouted any representation that the 76ers were getting in an extremely close game. I mean, it was a nail-biting game, and here are the Knick fans just overwhelmingly in evidence in the Wells Fargo Arena where the 76ers play in Philadelphia. I mean, there should have been cheesesteaks flying at their heads. They should have been covered in Velveeta, my friends. Unbelievable. Cheese whiz. But they bought the tickets so they could distribute them. I guess that they can find 2,000 Philadelphia fans willing to go to the game on a freebie because they didn't want to have this atrocity occur again. But with the complete support of the arena going in favor of the Knicks. All right, we'll see you guys tomorrow, a Degenerate Friday edition of the Morning Briefing. Thanks so much for tuning in. For Mike Lubitz, I'm Jeff DeForest. And once again, great to be on NoFilter.net and Caffeine TV with today's edition of the Morning Briefing.